Hey, everybody, Randy Patterson here with Boomerosity. Of course, if you follow us at all, we're into rock and roll and blues and all that. But, for me, a lot of times I like to get behind the scenes, deeper into the woods, down at a grassroots, granular level on stuff. And for that, my personal thrill is talking to the people who have been behind the scenes, far away from the microphone and the spotlight and get into the nuts and bolts of stuff, whether it's the business or the personal lives, without getting, in anything too purient or anything like that. I'm not a mudslinger, so I don't care anything about that. But to be able to hear people's stories where they talk to people at a one-on-one deep level, and there's so little of that out there compared to everything else that's available. And I had the opportunity to read this book here. I got an advanced copy to read it, and I just fell in love with the book and was just so inspired by the person who wrote it. The person who wrote this book is called Icons of Rock, and the person that wrote it is Jenny Boyd. Jenny is the ex-wife of Mick Fleetwood, and she is the sister of Kathy Boyd, who was married to George Harrison and Eric Clapton. So you know these women, you know the stories behind them. But she wrote a fascinating book that was based on early work for her dissertation that she was working on several years ago. And it's interviews with a lot of icons. And wow, I mean, it goes deeper than anything I've ever read by anybody when it comes to artists in popular music. You'll definitely want this book for your own personal library, as well as a gift for anybody who's into music and into the creative process. That's what this is really about, is how people tap into their creativity and manifest it into productive work. And she does an amazing job on this. We have a fascinating 30, 40-minute long talk. And she is just the neatest woman to talk to. I really do believe that. And I've got several that are friends, and these women are unique. They are special because of what they've had to live with and through. Nancy Andrews, others that I've had the pleasure of meeting, and these are all wonderful women. And I'm proud to say that Jenny is now part of one of those that I've got to talk to. So again, I can't stress enough, please get her book. Please buy it as a gift. Please read it from cover to cover. So, and if you don't mind, would you please share this interview with your friends? Please like it. Please subscribe to the channel you're listening to it from. And that just helps us and won't cost you a dime. So without any further ado, here's my first interview with Jenny Boyd. Until next time, this is Randy Patterson. Take care. It's a pleasure to meet you, Jenny. Finally, after reading your book and hearing all about you, here we are. So
Wonderful. Look what you've got in the background.
yeah, I was hoping you might like that. And I was also hoping you weren't missing any book covers for some reason. So
Right. I think it's very thoughtful of you.
thank you for taking the time. Where are you dialing in from? From the UK?
From London. From
Oh,
London. Yeah.
okay. And I got to hand it to you. This book was amazing to read, and
Oh, no, that's
but yeah,
lovely.
I loved
Yeah.
your method, your approach, the questions you asked, and so I want to get to that in a moment. But correct me if I'm wrong. This was a rewrite of some work you did some years before. Is that correct?
Right. So those interviews, not all of them, were done, most of them were done in between 1988 and 1990. And first one I did 40, that was for the dissertation. And then I carried on doing it because then I found an agent because I thought this is really great stuff. I'd never done anything like this before, but obviously I knew about musicians because I'd lived, Mick and Deborah, the whole band and everything. And because Ian, my second husband, was going out on the road with Don Henley and Bonnie Raitt, Dylan, although we don't have Dylan in there, I did ask him. I had a lot of people that I knew that I could actually start off with. And so I ended up by doing 75 of those. And what happened is that, that was all great. Came out in Musicians in Tune. And then I moved to England and brought all these audio cassettes. So you can imagine there were 75, and I have to keep them safe because they trusted me, and I didn't want anyone stealing them, and I didn't want to. I couldn't risk putting them into MP3 because who could I trust? At one of the shops or whatever. And then it came out, was re-released in England for the first time in 2014, and I thought I'm never going to use them again. And so what I did, which was just, still can't believe I did it, I started tearing them up. And I tear each one and got each cassette and did it because, wherever I was, I had to find like a big space and hopefully that was safe. But I kept 8, and I don't know why or what reason I kept these 8. There was no logic, but thank God I kept 8. And, years went by, and this was all over like 30, 35 years. And I had a friend who was actually able to put these 8 into MP3. And I thought, great, that's lovely. I can put it in that little drawer and lock it up. And thinking I would never use them again. But then Bonnier, who's the publishers, they took over the one in 2014, and they wanted to do a re-release. But for me to do it how I wanted to do it, I had complete carte blanche. So then I thought, okay, what I want is transcribe the 8 that I've got, which is George Harrison, Eric, Ringo, Joni Mitchell, Don Henley, Ravi Shankar, who else? Joni Mitchell, of course, and Tony Williams, great jazz singer. So I transcribed all of those, and I hadn't listened to them for 35 years.
Wow.
So it was so inspiring. It was just just amazing and so relevant today as it was then. And so I transcribed all those, and those are the ones that actually start each chapter or each little piece. And then with the others, because I didn't have them anymore, I just took it from the book, and instead of them being underneath a particular chapter like collective unconscious or drugs and alcohol, say Keith Richards, I took him out of all these different ones and just put it in under Keith Richards. That's different. Then the other thing is, I thought, now what's going on today? So I tried to find people who I could speak to, musicians, that said how different it is, the music world today, compared to 1990, really, when all these were done, 1980. And so we got Jacob Collier, and I don't know if you know of him, but I think he's great. He did a great interview and showed me how different it is today. But also Atticus Ross, who's done the music, for the films and got Academy Awards and this and that. So he did, a wonderful interview as well. Someone called Egg White, who's a prolific songwriter. So that was very interesting to see how different songs are made now. And Sarah Warwick, who's also like a 2-3-time, she did like pop music and would go out on the road and everything. Then she got cancer 3 different times, with 5 years in between. She changed her whole music outlook and wanted to be there to help people to write their own songs and sing their own songs and record them. So that's what she does. And I used to go to her singing group. In fact, I went to one on Sunday, and she was lovely. So I have her. So then we have the newbies, and then the oldies.
That's what's so amazing, because sometimes there is a common thread, and often there's not, from what I saw. And but reading your stuff, it struck me that you just came in from, obviously I'll call it being an insider, because you and Patty being sisters, and the people you're associated with, who you were married to, and all that kind of stuff. And it struck me that there was probably, if I could read into what I was, or peer into what I was reading there had to be a lot less guardedness, maybe.
Yep.
It just appeared to me that the walls were all down, and there was this, 2 friends talking, which I found amazing. Do you feel that gave you a better quality interview and better quality answers than if some bozo like me come in and ask the very same questions?
Right. And a lot of that could be one doesn't know, but I think having got my master's later in life, sort of when I was in my 30s, when I was in LA, in counseling psychology, and doing quite a few years with psychology and psychotherapy and all that stuff. I think a lot of it was actually knowing. They would say a certain amount and stay kind of on the surface, but knowing then when the silence came, to actually stay with it and just quietly see what happens. And usually that's when they would kind of dig deep down, which was brilliant. And each one pretty much would say, wow, I've never had an interview like that before. So you think creativity, then became huge and, being in the zone and all that. But this was like 35, 33 years ago. And, nobody was talking about, it's like Eric Clapton said he thought on the cover of the first book, he was the only one that had ever experienced this peak experience because nobody had ever talked about it before. It was like, oh, don't mention that, it's like, don't mention the muse because it's too subtle and it might not visit again. It was that, but I kind of went in there. And, some of the blues musicians thought I meant more like gospel or church.
Which is
So
their
there was
roots.
kind of
Yeah.
like, which is their roots, yeah. So, and I could have carried on interviewing forever. I loved it, because for me, connection is everything. And I felt a connection with every single one of them. And so it was like a joy.
Mhm.
And the initial, when it was a dissertation, I called it the spiritual and creative, what was it? Creative. It was creativity, the spiritual and creative link, because it is very spiritual.
Mhm.
However one wants to term that.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I found remarkable to me in your approach is that you really got into some core, very, spiritual, very mystical, very mysterious type of things about that process. And like you said, way before people started asking those kind of questions, and I dare say people still aren't asking those kind of questions, me included, because we have to get into this soundbite mode, right? And so to your point, you said some people, like I think you said it was Eric that said that nobody ever got him to go that deep before, never got him to think about that. Is there a common theme along that lines that you have found with the majority, if not all, of the artists, that if you were to say, look, folks, if you're going to be a creative, here's what I've learned from the great creatives before you. Here are some common threads or a common thread. What did you learn on that?
So do you mean the first lot of people? The sort of like, I started off with Don Henley, so talking to them, or do you mean once I'd got quite a few of those under my belt, then is it different?
Either
Or
way.
do you mean that
Just
either
like
way?
standing back and looking at it from your perspective today, either did it evolve or do you see a common thread across
There's
both
definitely
generations?
common thread. Oh, across the generations. Between the ones I initially did, there was a common thread which surprised me, which was, except for two of them, all 75 of them had been nurtured as children. Their creativity had been nurtured.
Huh.
Whether it was the parents, or whether if the parents were musical, of course, like David Crosby's, they all sit around the fire and sing together, or Chris McVie, or the man down the street, like George Harrison, because his parents, they liked music, but they didn't know how to teach him how to play guitar. So they always had all grandparents. There was always a nurturing experience towards their creativity and allowing to do that.
Do you think that was because of a generational thing, or because, especially in the English, all the English ones, because it was post-war? What do you think that was?
No, because I think it was sort of American, probably mostly American, I think, the first lot. I think I don't know, because then you've got to take into account they're all famous. You
Yeah.
know, so then there might be some that because they had all that, it gave them an extra belief in themselves when
Good
they were
point.
younger,
Yeah.
you know, and having the drive. And what is the drive, you know, about then feeling you are becoming more of who you really are? You know, it's just sort of that drive was encouraged.
Hmm.
And you know, I think it was Stephen Bishop, who he had a stepfather who was so, not only did he not encourage it, he was really nasty about if Stephen was caught, you know, playing his guitar, locking himself up in the closet, you know, trying to play it before he got home from work. Yeah, and I think the other thing, the ones that had musicians for parents got into their creativity and their music earlier than the others, which
Probably
probably is my
prenatal,
fault.
huh?
Yeah, and exactly. Um, that was one. And then they had all experienced this amazing thing of when you feel that it's just coming through you. You know, if you're just writing, or you're on stage and you're playing, and suddenly you just play. And, you know, like one of them, no, I think it was Stephen Stills or Graham Nash, said that when they were on stage and they were so in the zone, they all played the wrong verse at the same time. So
Whoa.
that's the thing, you know, that's the thing, is that they all were able to talk about that incredible experience, and whether they had it in dreams, where, you know, lyrics would come in dreams or riffs, or, you know, they all could. And then when I talked to, say, Jacob Collier, he was saying, yeah, you know, that's what I call my mystical sort of, he said, I really would love to talk to you more about this. And, you know, it was almost as if he hadn't spoken about it before.
Wow.
So they all had that in common. And of course, they all believed everybody had the potential to be creative. And, you know, and I think because mine initially, the whole drive to write about it was feeling I never was creative. You know, I'd be watching George and John and Paul on the sort of roof of the bungalow in India, coming up with these amazing songs only from whatever was around, not even, you know, just taking things, everyday things, became a song.
Mm-hmm.
So I never felt creative. And so once I'd finished it, I remember thinking, great, well, people like me, and there must be tons of them who think they're not creative. You are creative, you know, you can be creative. And it's about getting in touch with who you are, and it's self-expression.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Everybody can experience that amazing feeling, you know, even athletes or just,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I hear that a lot where, you know, and they can't articulate it anywhere near as well as you have in some of your interview subjects. I love what you've got out of George on some of the things, and it was the simplest of responses that he would have. You know, something about when you asked him, you know, if he knew what did he want to be when he grew up, and he said something to the effect, "Well, I still don't think I've grown up," or
Right,
something like that.
right.
And
Yeah,
that kind of spoke to the childlike awe of creativity, I thought, you know, from
that's
reading
it.
it. And
Yeah.
then, you know, and you got into other things I never ever thought about asking people about, because I usually don't have the kind of time, but you know, talked about recurring dreams, and
Yeah.
then a comment he made that I just thought was amazing was talking about spiritual experiences. And he said, you know, you were asking him if it was from, you know, being on stage or creating and all that. And he said, no, I think something along the lines, I'm paraphrasing, of course, that he thought the most spiritual experience was doing nothing. I
Yeah.
was like, wow, that, you know,
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
is,
Or the meditation, you know, do you remember? And he said, you
yes,
know, in the
yes.
stillness of the night, like early morning when everything is asleep. And yeah.
What would you, I mean, you've got some amazing interviews in there. Which interview, if I would like for you to share a paraphrase or a summary of one of your interviews that you would like for viewers when they see this in a week or two, or whenever I'm given the okay to post it, that you would point to or use as a calling card to say, hey, if you like this story, you're really going to like or love the rest of the book. Share
Yeah.
a paraphrase of that.
Okay. So I would say what comes to mind is Joni Mitchell
Ah,
saying, the net that you capture creativity is made up of the threads of your alertness. Because if you think about it, that's about being in the moment.
Mhm.
That's about mindfulness. You know, it's like seeing the joy of actually being in the moment and looking around you. And it's very different to if you've got tons of stuff going on in your head,
Right.
you know, to really, that's the net, you know, just that you can capture it.
Wow. That's yeah, I'd forgotten about that quote. That's very cool.
Yeah.
When you were reworking the book, and I know most of it was, stuff you had already viewed and you already worked with and all that, but on this particular evolution of the work,
Yeah.
was there anything that was a big surprise or a big revelation or a big re-epiphany, if you will, that you had forgotten about, or something totally new as you were doing this rewrite?
When I was doing the rewrite, as I'd mentioned, it touched me. It was inspired me so much. Things that were said so long ago, because they'd all been, you know, under lock and key or whatever. It just brought to life the power of what they've said, of what they were saying, what they were talking about. So it wasn't like, oh yeah, I remember that. Oh yes, I remember her saying that. No, it's like everything was just like alive. And it also felt amazing, I have to say, having locked all this stuff up or trying to hide it or this, it feels like a bird, you know, it's like they've flown now. Now it's okay. We can have all of George. We can have all of Joni. You know, it's sort of, it's released something.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And the wonderful thing is, you know, interviewing these 4 recent ones, they're sort of saying the same kind of thing, even though there's a difference in the, you know, like bands don't make money going out on the road or the sort of fundamental. Sorry, let's turn this off. You know, there's definite things like that is different, but the actual songwriting and the sharing and, you know, I think it's different also in the way that, I don't know if you remember when Egg Wright was talking, how you come up with probably one line or some of the lyrics, and then you send it on to somebody else who then does the drum bits, and then you send it on to somebody else. I thought, I wonder what that's like, you know, who then feels that's my song? You know, even though you
Good
have
point.
people who it's well known they write together, say like, you know, McCartney and Lennon. It's like, you
Mhm.
know, they write together and we know that. That's fine. That's 2 of them. But when you've got different ones and they're not even in the same room, how is that?
Yeah. Like Elton John and Bernie Taupin even. Yeah.
Yeah.
You didn't
Yeah.
talk to them, but they did kind of the same thing, separate. They even did an album called Two Rooms, So
Right. Right.
was there
Yeah.
was there anyone that was, I mean, maybe you don't want to say any names or anything. I'm certainly not looking for anything, salacious or anything like that, but I've had people that were a little difficult to interview, for not because they were being rude or mean or
Right.
anything, but dadgum, they were just a tough interview. Was there
I mean,
anybody that was
couldn't
like
get in
that?
there. No. Honestly, hand on heart, no.
Cool.
I got in there, you know, I managed to each one. There was nobody that was like you could feel the walls go up, because you're talking about some pretty deep stuff, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Very
I didn't
personal, very intimate.
very personal. I didn't experience that at all.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's neat.
Yeah.
When you were working on this, was there anything that, and I'm trying to be respectful of your time, I don't want to take too much of your time here, but was there anything when you look back on it, especially for those who are no longer with us, and there's several that you talked to who are gone now,
Mhm.
and you look at it and you go, gosh, I could have or should have or would have done this if I had only known, or I wish I could have gone back and sat down with so and so and went this little different direction. Was there anything like that that kind of popped up while you're working on this?
Oh, there wasn't. There
Wow.
wasn't. It was complete. It was complete. Each one felt complete. I felt I'd got a jewel, you know, just and I know that the musicians at that time, that George came by on the day that I did some book launch in Book Soup. Don Henley was there, and a few of the musicians, and Jeff Lynne, and Ian Wallace, because I was married to him at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And can't remember if Graham Nash was there. Anyway, they all loved it because it wasn't like, what did you eat for breakfast? It was different.
Deep, yeah.
And I think they felt seen, although that would seem silly thing to say because they're seen all the time when they're on stage and everything. But you don't normally get a chance to go that deep.
Well, it's like I was saying earlier, I kind of look at celebrities and fans, being, I'm trying to see it in the screen here and I'm not getting it right. There may be this far apart. Somebody like me who may have talked to the same person 5 or 6 times, I might be like here, but then when I see how what your background, what you accomplished, you're more like, there. They may have somebody much closer because they're musicians, somebody in the band, their spouse, their
Right.
significant other. But because of your proximity to those people, to that
Yeah.
business, and I think
Yeah.
that's something that people, and I put myself barely into those concentric circles there, but what I find when I talk to fans is definitely very much an outside looking in, just because that's the way it's supposed to be. We're all that way, but
Yeah.
people, if they really cared about and really paid attention, I think they could see things much more deeper about an artist. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think artists yearn for that, even though they've got to keep people at a distance for obvious reasons. What do you have to
Right.
say about that?
I don't know, because I would imagine that when the fans are listening, they obviously love an artist because they love what they're singing, they love their music.
Mhm.
So I would imagine that if they have someone that they just love, when they listen to their songs, that's the thing that that speak to them.
True.
I don't think it means, oh, now I need to know all about them. It's
Yeah,
just
good point.
it's just, it's just the song just
Well,
somehow.
I'm one of those weird ones that want to know all about them. So,
Right. Yeah, let me think.
but
Mm.
yeah, I mean, I just think it's so cool that your perspective, like I said, it opened my eyes to my own work.
Yeah.
I'm curious with this body of work, and you said you were doing it for your dissertation and stuff. How did all of this help you with your career and your profession? Did it give you something unique that maybe your peers wish they had, or maybe they gleaned from your work so that it could help their work?
You know what happened without me even, how life can do that? Sometimes you just go from A to B to C and you're not even realizing how it happened, because then I'd done this and I started work. I was living in LA, and because I'd got my master's, then I was able to actually go and work at this treatment center in Tucson, called Sierra
Mhm.
Tucson.
Mhm.
And it
I
was
grew up
while
in
I was
Phoenix, so
yeah, all right. It was while I was there that actually my book first came out, and it was like having another baby. It was just like, oh God, so incredible. But I worked there, and then I worked for another treatment center called Cottonwood, but then was living here, got people to go over to Cottonwood. I'm not saying the book itself, but I'm not quite sure why I'm saying this, but what it helped me to do was to talk to people about their use of, whether it was drugs or alcohol or whatever. And there was a feeling where I knew how to connect with them because I'd lived the life I'd lived. But also I had learned to, I suppose learning to, her getting a master's in counseling and psychology gave you an in being able to sort of get through to people. So in that way, it helped. It helped, and I did that for like 20 something years until I then went back and I started writing my memoir, Jennifer Juniper. But it did help in as much as, because I had interviewed those people, it was like then talking to people who had drug and alcohol problems. And maybe I felt more confident in it. I don't know. Maybe.
cool. I can see where
Yeah.
that would be, and maybe from their perspective,
Mhm.
it maybe gave you a little more traction as an authoritative figure, and they felt maybe they could,
Yes. There you go.
trust you more, let
Yep.
their guard down more, and maybe not play games with you more.
Right. 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 Right.
So,
Yeah. And then as well as that, my own use, so I felt, yeah, I get it. I get what you're doing and understand. And, there was definitely that sort of feeling.
right.
Mm,
Well, what's
mm.
next for you? You got this great book. I know you're
Oh,
promoting it. What do you got
yeah.
going on next?
Well, I'm going to the Beetle Fest on February, the weekend of February the 8th, no, 7th, 8th, 9th,
Where's that going to be this year?
in New York.
In New
It's
York.
at the
Okay.
TWA Hotel, right by
I think
JFK.
Chris O'Dell's going to be at that one, if I'm not
Yes,
mistaken.
I'm really looking forward to seeing her.
I
Yeah.
haven't talked to Nancy in a week or two, but I'm wondering if she's making that as well. I'll have to find out. I need to make one of those before they quit doing them or
Okay.
something. But
Well, this is the 50th anniversary
yeah,
of having the Beetle Fest. Apparently, Mark Lapidos, who runs it, he asked John Lennon right at the very beginning, "Can I do this?" And John said yes. And also, it's the 60th anniversary of when the Beatles flew TWA to New York from
wow,
London. So the
that's gonna
two
be
sort of
huge.
big anniversaries. I think there's going to be a lot of people there.
Oh yeah, it
Yeah.
should be fun. It should be fun. I look forward to seeing the pictures of it. I'd forgotten all about it. Otherwise, I'd try to make it up there, but I don't think I can make
Yeah.
it up there this soon. Are you going to be going anywhere else in the States?
No, I go to the States every sort of like 8, 9, 10 months, because my family live sort of LA side.
Mhm.
So it might be quite fun. I'll work with the publishers in the States to do some book signings or stuff like that.
I
That's
definitely
always
want to get a copy of your book. I mean, I've got the soft copy, the PDF, but I want to get the hard copy and get your signature on it because I
Oh,
love the
yeah.
book.
What I had a thought, seeing you there with all of that around you, it would be quite fun to put on Instagram and put your name. And is there anything else, or are you on Instagram? I don't go on very often, but when I do, it's very much sort of promoting the book or
Sure.
yeah.
A couple things. Yeah, I'm on Instagram, Facebook,
Should I try and
TikTok.
find you? Should I just try and find you?
The page is Boomerocity. So if you just look up Boomerocity, so it's BOOMEROCITY. That means the essence of being a baby boomer.
Wonderful. Well, it's been such a pleasure speaking with you.
Likewise, a lot of
Yeah.
fun, buddy.
All right. Well, have a
Jenny, it's a
wonderful day.
blast. Thank you,
Yeah.
and we'll be in touch.
Yes.
All right,
All
take
right.
care.
Take
Good luck on
care.
the book.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.